Everyone wants purpose, meaning, right? And that desire does not fade throughout our lives. And when I'm doing the Lego workshops, I'm giving people tasks, but that's different than a real job that needs to be done.
And using it to make those connections helps you find out what maybe their purpose could be. Tips from Trestle is brought to you by Wiseox AI, Advantage Trust GPO, the Dining with Dementia Workshop, and the 100% Leader. Welcome to Tips from Trestle, the Senior Living Food and Hospitality Podcast. This podcast explores the senior living industry with a unique focus on food, hospitality, and the community experience. I'm your host, Aaron Fish. My goal for this podcast: educate, inform, and inspire leaders in senior living. How? By bringing the resident and customer experience to the front of mind in our industry. We should bring the passionate spirit of food and hospitality to everything that we do and everyone we serve each and every day. So what are we waiting for? Let's get to it. Welcome back to Tips from Trestle. I'm Aaron Fish, and today we're diving into something truly special. What if I told you that colorful plastic bricks could unlock memories, restore dignity, and transform senior care? Today on the podcast, my guest is JP York from the 2054 Institute, and we're exploring Lego Serious Play, a revolutionary therapeutic approach that's changing how we think about memory care and cognitive health. You'll hear inspiring stories of residents rediscovering their voices, reconnecting with their identities, and experiencing breakthrough moments through the simple power of creative building. Whether you're a care professional, a family member, or just curious about innovative wellness solutions, this episode is packed with insights that matter. So grab a seat and let's build something meaningful together. Let's dive in. JP, thanks for joining me today on Tips from Trestle.
My pleasure.
So we're here at the Eden Alternative International Conference. And when I talked to Michelle, the CEO, about bringing the podcast and like getting people to come on and talk about their sessions, what they're doing, yours jumped off the page to me because being a fan of Lego, my kids, we have a Lego table and Legos are everywhere in my house. It was a fascinating idea around using it the way you use it. And so I want to talk to you about your session and all of that in a deep dive. So the session was called Lego Serious Play for Memory Care and Beyond. And so I guess tell us a little bit about the origin of Lego Serious Play, how it was designed, where it comes from, and I guess really what made you think we can do this in memory care.
Yeah, so it's really not my idea. The idea is this woman named Loretta Vini has been doing it for about 20 years. She's been using Legos for memory care. And that started for her very personally with her mom, who was diagnosed with dementia at 77 years old. So they had always played with Legos together, and her mom lived another 16 years with dementia, and they built with Legos together that whole time, right up until 4 days before her mom died. And Loretta started doing it because when she was running errands with her mom in the car, mom would try to get out of the car and wander off, but Loretta would build Lego like spinners or little activities for her mom, and her mom would patiently work on those.
Yeah.
So my connection to it, I love Legos as much as life itself. I can't imagine a world without Legos. Been playing with them ever since I was 5 years old, and I would just build worlds and worlds. And later on, I realized that it helped keep me calm as a child. Mm-hmm. And then even as an adult into COVID and into these past few years, I've noticed that my mind is always racing, but it really helps me slow down and just feel more present, feel better. I thought if I was in memory care, this is what I would want to do on snow days or when I'm sick or, when I can't leave the house. And so it's similar to the situation.
Yeah. Like I see it with my own boys, their engagement with Lego. Like my youngest son will, like you're talking about, we got a table and he's built a whole city.
Right.
And he goes up there and he engages, and it's just captivating to watch and see, and then to remember myself doing the same thing when I was his age. And so one of the things that you mentioned in your session was the hand brain connection. You kind of alluded to it a little bit there, but I'm curious, how does that neurological insight become meaningful for people living with dementia or memory loss when you think about it?
That is a great question. And so I want to start by saying that my work is experimental. So what I'm looking for here, really the 10,000-foot long-term goal is to explore whether working with our hands can help reconnect brain parts that have become disconnected in these various
Okay,
neurological
yeah.
diseases. So if you think about when you take a drive, when you're driving somewhere you've driven 1,000 times
Mhm.
and you just sort of wake up and you're there.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, that happened in 20 minutes. So that's an example where your hands know what to do without your conscious input. So there are certain parts of our brain that are connected to speech and directly to cognition. And then the part that's in our hands, I mean, it's up to 30 and 40% of the whole brain structure. If you think about all those things we do instinctively, making food, using a knife, going to the bathroom, all our ADLs, brushing your teeth.
Yeah.
I'm a musician, so I play instruments, so I see it very directly there. So the hope and what we observe is that it seems to bring people back in a kind of temporary way, that working with the hands does open up some brain connections that seem to be damaged. And I'm not a neurologist. I can't give you all the detailed
All
science.
right.
So it's just a hypothesis that working with our hands, we can reach parts of the brain potentially that are undamaged. And
Yeah.
hopefully, by working with our hands enough and connecting to creativity, restore or at least maintain cognition and dexterity.
I love that. Again, it's that sensory experience, and we talk about those in memory care all the time. So, Lego Serious Play has these 4 stages:
Mhm.
prompt, build, share, and reflect. So, can you briefly walk us through what that process looks like, not just in practice, but maybe more so in practice in a memory care setting?
Yeah, it's so the Lego Serious Play is a business strategy tool designed for the highest levels of strategic planning with your business. And the idea is that instead of if you're facing business problems, which every business is, you can either hire an outside consultant who's going to tell you what to do, which may or may not be the right move for your industry. The idea with Lego Serious Play is that your people in your company know what is needed. And so we're trying to use that hand connection, that 40% of our brain that we're not usually using, to build models that give us insight for those things. So example, if you have your executive team build a model of why your competitor's product is working better. If you have 12 models of why your competitor's product is working better, all of a sudden you have this incredible cross pollination collaboration. So that's Lego Serious Play background. You were asking about memory care.
Yeah.
So the main difference is that we're dealing with such a huge spectrum of abilities,
Right.
or lack of abilities, depending on how we think of it. But when we're talking about memory care and skilled nursing, you have cognitive decline, you have vision challenges, you have challenges with dexterity or one hand might not even work at all. Both hands might not work.
No.
And then we also have mobility. So wheelchairs, the fact that a lot of people need support moving. It's not the same as everybody coming to sit down in one go. And then the last one is hearing challenges as well. So the difference and the purpose of what I'm doing is trying to find activities that reach everyone on that spectrum while providing higher level stimulation
Yeah.
for us as the volunteers, care partners. We're looking for an activity that everyone can use safely and everyone can participate in that also is fun and exciting for us.
I love that. It's a thing that leaders in senior living can understand because it is a business strategy. But with this whole process, it's been distilled down to how we support the single resident in memory care. And so you've been doing this a little over a year and a half now. You've done it in about 7 different communities. And so I'm curious, what was the moment or observation that I guess caught you the most off guard, good or bad, when doing Lego Serious Play?
It's There's a lot because, and the answer is that I'm constantly seeing improvements in abilities that I did not expect. And maybe improvements is a strong word, but I've been working with the same people for a year and a half. And one example is a woman who did not speak. And then when I asked her what it was like for her growing up, she lived 4 blocks from the Louisiana state capitol, and her parents taught her how corrupt all the politicians are. And she has this whole speech, this monologue about this is what my parents were like, this is what my siblings were like, right? In Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So there's this whole story, and it's like that person hasn't spoken in a year.
Wow.
Like I have not heard them speak. And then we start working with the bricks, and then they have uninterrupted minutes of stuff to tell me.
Wow. Just hearing like that trigger of that memory, like I think it's an anecdotal like data point to what you were talking about earlier about making those connections and
Right.
triggering that 40% of the brain. That's such a fascinating thing to
So
see here.
if I may, we had another resident who, this was in Nebraska, and this guy was an engineer. And so he just took the Legos,
Oh yeah.
built over his head, 100 or 200 pieces in a session. And the nursing staff there told me afterwards that he was initiating on other tasks better than he had been before, which is non-typical for the form of dementia.
Yeah. So it's not only like in the moment, but it also helped him later as he keeps doing it. Such fascinating. This is why I wanted you on the podcast. So thinking about the domains of well-being, right? Because that is really like the Eden alternative that what they talk about. You frame the work through identity, autonomy, joy, and connectedness. Do you have a concrete example that maybe from a build that revealed something powerful about a resident and their sense of self? Oh,
Sense of self is really interesting. So one thing we'll ask sometimes is about what's your greatest achievement? And I love that question because I think for obvious reasons,
yeah.
and because I don't think people have the opportunity to share their greatest achievement or who they were. And so for one of the residents I was working with, I asked him what his greatest achievement was, and he said flying a plane. And I said, wow, that's pretty, thinking that we're talking about a private pilot, Cessnas, something like that. No, the man was one of the head pilots for United, flying 747s across the Atlantic Ocean
Oh, wow.
for over 30 years.
That's crazy.
And
Yeah.
and you can't help but see somebody differently at that point. You don't know that about them. They're just a person in memory care. We
Yeah.
talk about dignity and all that, but it's entirely different when you can think back to that man with hundreds of lives under his command
Yeah.
regularly.
That's such a powerful story because we talk about getting people's life stories when they come into memory care. And I'm sure the family probably mentioned that, but are the frontline staff getting that life story? Are they aware of that? Like, did they know that about him until all of this happened? It's a 50-50.
Some did, probably most don't. And we all know there's turnover and all that. But yeah.
Yeah. And so being able to have that connection to who that person is and theirself is such a powerful thing for those frontline staff. And so you're really open talking about the successes and the failures around using LSP. I'd love for you to maybe give us an example of something that didn't work and what it taught you about using this and adapting the LSP method.
I'm going to answer your question in a little bit of an interesting way, and talk about the main ongoing challenge I have is this stigma of childishness. And so this tool I've developed works really well. It's almost like baking a cake, that if the ingredients are right, everybody has a good time.
Yeah.
If you get a few people are excited about it, and especially if you have family visiting or volunteer group or, some new people to teach and to learn about, it works really well. A good percentage of residents will just say, I don't want to do that. That's too childish. I'm too old for that. And so at first I was really frustrated. And in a sense, I'm still frustrated. I'm still trying to, but I have to appreciate their honesty.
Yeah.
And I think that it opens the door for what is going to reach them. And how do it's easy for us to sit here and say, Legos are for everybody. Legos are fun. Everyone
Yeah.
wants to have fun.
Yeah.
Practically in memory care, that's not the case.
Yeah.
Some people do not want to have fun or they're not capable of having fun.
Right.
And so you get into discussions of trauma and why that is. And so it's, failure is a part of this work, I think, right?
Yeah.
And that's the reason I'm doing it is because there is so little that works consistently
Yeah.
and people are very different day to day. And so the main thing you're asking about adapting the method. And I think it's always a reminder to meet people where they are and
Yeah.
that I have to use my business strategy tool to figure out what is important to my higher ability. So where I work is a skilled nursing mixture of memory care
Mm.
and physical disabilities. So the people with physical disabilities, but no cognitive decline, they don't really want to do the Legos. So there are medicinal benefits. There's all sorts of reasons I can tell them that they should
Right.
do the Legos. And so what it's teaching me and what I'm still working on is how to connect with what's important to them
Yeah.
and treat each group and each individual as their own entity and find what strategically is important to them because it's a childish material, but there's
Yeah.
a lot of science behind it. There's a lot of health benefits is what we're looking for,
Yeah.
helping people live healthily. So yeah, so it's really that like, oh, not everybody is just excited to have fun. Right. Shoot.
Yeah.
How do you connect to the desire to stay independent and maintain dexterity and maintain cognition and communicate with your caregivers, family, and anybody else who comes through?
Yeah. Eh, Great little point in there. You mentioned the framework. And so the framework you created, I think the ABC construction kit.
Yeah, that's kind of an older name, and that was an homage to my grandfather,
Okay.
who started the ABC construction company
Ah,
out in Southern California,
okay.
and he did that to be at the beginning of the phone book.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so, um, so the name is still kind of in flux.
Okay.
For the time being, we call it Lego Serious Play for Dementia Care,
Got it. Okay.
and we need a snappier name. But again, that same thing.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, like ABC Construction Kit, does that feel childish?
Right.
If you're a construction company, you want it to be simple. How do we communicate that it's simple and friendly and fun, but also serious and scientific and medicinal?
Yeah. So give me a kind of a high level overview of that framework so listeners can understand it.
So I started by just using Duplo bricks. And the reasons for that, the main reason, my background's in engineering and safety is really paramount to
Yeah.
everything. So the main reason I didn't know exactly what population I'd be working with, and I wanted to make sure that nobody could swallow that. We know
Ah,
that there's some number of people with dementia that will swallow things. So I want to make sure I could step away and not worry about
right.
the major health concerns of violent. And then it turns out that that's really valuable for dexterity and vision problems, right? The bigger
Yeah.
blocks put everybody on a more level playing field. And so the framework is there are differences, like we were talking about. For instance, in a traditional LSP session, everybody sits down at the table and starts together.
Yeah.
For memory care, skilled nursing, that's not realistic because with the wheelchair means that you have to bring people in one at a time
Mm.
and you don't want to leave people sitting there while you get more people. So I give everyone a base plate and about 8 or 12 bricks. And actually, I'll show you this little piece. I
Yeah.
brought this because it helps me to have something to hold while I talk. So it's
Yeah.
kind of a visual reminder. But so this is a puzzle
Okay.
that I put together. And because I was getting a lot of this from my older
Okay.
folks who didn't grow up with Legos. So for some people, this is the first time they've ever seen Legos.
Okay.
But so I created this puzzle and I learned that taking stuff apart is easier than putting it together. So we're just looking for maximally simple. We always start pretty much with the tallest tower, refreshing everybody. So everybody gets a green plate and then 8 to 12 bricks. So it's not overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
And you want the table to be totally clean other than that. Anything can distract people and throw people off.
Yeah.
And for kids, you just give them a big pile of Legos. For these adults that we're working with, less is better. So start with 8 to 12 bricks, build the tallest tower. And then you have to realize that for some people, that's going to happen in about 30 seconds. So they're going to need a new project, right? Or a lot more bricks right away.
Yeah.
And then for some people, that building the tallest tower will take the whole session. That can occupy them and be a good project for 25 minutes. And build the tallest tower, I like because it's a really an invitation to build,
Okay.
and so I have a lot of people who will just sort them or do build horizontally or kind of create patterns and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, the framework is still evolving, but
Yeah.
but everybody gets a base plate, everybody gets some bricks. We start with tallest tower, and then if for people who can zoom tallest tower now on board, that's when you start asking them about where did you grow up? What was your career? What's the best vacation you ever went?
Yeah.
Tell me about your greatest achievement. What do you love? And you can get into harder questions like, what's the hardest part of your day? Or describe what it feels like having dementia. What does it feel like in your head?
Yeah. Is it something that you do every day, like 3 times a week?
So we are kind of exploring it right now as a once a month intervention.
Okay.
So for any given group in memory care or skilled nursing, you want everybody to have a Lego session once a month.
Okay. As we wrap up here, when you think about all of this, you've got a lot of like irons in the fire about how this is evolving with the way you're doing it. And so you're doing monthly workshops like you just mentioned at AG Roads. What's next for Lego Serious Play for Dementia?
There are a few things we're looking at. One is trying to start gathering numerical data about what's happened. And so we're looking into doing a 6-month dexterity study with some of our residents. And so the residents would commit to doing a Lego workshop for 6 months, and we would do pre and post tests
Okay.
for their dexterity. And the instrument there is called the Purdue pegboard test.
Okay.
So that's the dexterity piece. The other piece is, like I mentioned, trying to reach my assisted living and independent living folks. And I think there's a real fundamental principle for all of us there in that what's childish to one person is really fun for another person. And
Yeah.
how much are we neglecting our own health through fear of being creative across all the domains of singing, dancing, coloring,
Yeah.
painting? How great are all these things, like in very proven ways for our bodies and our mind well-being, that we just don't do because it's shame. So that's a very deep question
Yeah.
that crosses the boundary from memory care to, our everyday society.
Yeah.
So that's the big thing I'm trying to answer with it. And then like researching well-being, is a very complicated thing.
Oh, yeah.
How do you measure happiness? How do you measure joy, especially with fading memories? And then the last two things that I want to call out are trying to use the Legos as a tools to bring families in more. So to have workshops once a month for families to come build with Legos and bring their grandchildren, the adult children, the great grands. So trying to do that once a month at each of our homes and at least just have a friendly event for the families. And the last bit, trying to find work for the residents. For those of us, for the people who don't want to have fun, they want to work.
Right.
Everyone wants
What's my
purpose
purpose?
and meaning.
Yeah.
Right. And that desire does not fade throughout our lives, right? Until maybe we could say the very late stages of dementia, that the need for purpose lessens. But right up until then, people want to have a reason to wake up. And what would be that purpose? And not in when I'm doing the Lego workshops, I'm giving people tasks, but that's different than a real job that needs to be done.
And using it to make those connections helps you find out what maybe their purpose could be.
Right. That's where we get back to business strategy, trying to do business strategy with the residents about what they want to do. First of all, for them to be able to choose their own activities, create new activities, but then this concept of work. How do we find work and meaning for them in this fast-paced society environment?
Yeah. That's so fascinating.
Because they're being physically taken care of, across the whole spectrum, sometimes very well, sometimes less well, but that purpose piece, if you're just being taken care of, if you just wake up and all you do is receive care, then, I just think that's really painful for people who we all kind of define ourselves by our work, and our activities are who we are. Our activities very broadly, that's what we do every day. So, Yeah. So that final frontier is finding jobs, like real jobs. For
Yeah.
the residents.
I love that. So tell listeners how they can learn more about the work you're doing.
Yeah. So I have a website and it is 2054institute.org. So the 2054 Institute is my organization, and you can email me jp.york@2054institute.org. I think those are probably the best ways right now.
Perfect. Well, JP, thank you for taking time away from the conference. Thank you for presenting. I'm a fan of Lego, and like I said, when I saw this, I knew we had to chat. So thank you
Yeah.
for joining me today on Tips from Trestle.
Yeah, my pleasure, Eric.
Thank you.
And can I add one final
Please.
thing for our listeners is that I really believe that any Lego person can do this with memory care folks. So if you are a Lego person, there's about 10 or 15% of us who are really Lego people who like to build. And so if you're in that category, I don't have a ton of experience in the field and a nursing degree or all the education and stuff. You can do this. It's not that crazy.
Right. No, I love that. So thank you for being
Yeah.
on the podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. So there it is, everybody. Another one in the books. Thanks again for tuning in. Please follow and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us on social media at Tips from Trestle. You can also learn more about the work I do by following me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. And be sure to check out Trestle Hospitality Concepts at www.trestlehospitalityconcepts.com. I'm your host, Aaron Fish, and this has been another episode of Tips from Trestle.